When I hear the name of Ramon Ramirez, I think about a partner. I have known Ramon Ramirez for 30-something years since I was a little boy, and had the opportunity to work alongside him several years ago during my time at Pecun. And someone that's always willing to work for the benefit of community and work in colectivo, in team. Somebody that's always looking ahead, looking tomorrow, and to see how we can better the lives not just of farm workers, immigrants, but all the folks that are in this country, have come to this country, that have been oppressed, marginalized.
Every worker, every farm worker has the ability to become an organizer. In 1995, during the Solinsky strike, we might have not won the strike, but we did win in the long run because we empowered farm workers. My name is Ramon Ramirez. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was born on November 2nd, 1954. I was president of Pecun, Oregon's Farm Worker Union, for 25 years, and I'm one of the founders that founded Pecun in 1985. I was born in South Central LA. As a young person, I moved to East LA. I lived on Whittier Boulevard, which is the area that was where all the marches at the height of the Chicano movement happened. So I think one of the things that shaped me early on in my youth was I came from a really poor working class family. During that particular time, there was a lot of issues in the community. There was, especially around police brutality, education, the lack of bilingual education. At that time, we were hearing a lot about the farm worker movement and Cesar Chavez. So growing up during that period of time, we weren't allowed to speak Spanish in class or in our schools. We were being Americanized. My name was Americanized. I went from Ramon to Raymond. I was in the second or third grade when my teacher brought in the movie The Alamo. And if you really look deep down on that movie, it was a process to Americanize Mexican folks to justify the taking of the Mexican territory. We were forced to see that movie. We were cheering for the Americans, cheering for people like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and stuff like that when our own people were being killed. So growing up during that period of time, the 60s, I got exposed to a lot of things. And I think that's what helped shape my understanding of life, was being around activism, being around the Chicano movement. We suffered the blood of police repression. And that's what formed me. I had a hatred for police and authority because I was beat up, I was arrested for nothing, just because I was brown. While I was in high school, it was in my senior year, Cesar Chavez came to our high school. And one of the things he mentioned was that I'm all for education. I'm all for people getting the education and going to school and coming back to your community as doctors, teachers, lawyers, community organizers. But you can do something now that will make a big difference to farm workers. And that was really simple. Boycott grapes. That made sense to me. I remember our high school organizing marches from our high school to the local Safeway to boycott, to get people to not buy grapes. And that happened for the whole year. When I left to Washington State, and I went to the University of Washington, became active in Mecha. But at the same time, I was also on the UFW boycott through Mecha and other organizations. We were able to get lettuce and grapes off the campus. And then after a year of doing that, I went to a conference in Iowa It was there that I met students from Mecha, and I met the Puerto Rican student movement, which is a Federation of University Students for Independence of Puerto Rico. And so I got really, really excited about that. And from LA, they were actually starting to work with an organization called CASA, Hermandad General de Trabajadores. It became a national mass revolutionary organization. So I immediately drawn into that. I became active in CASA and helped form the Seattle chapter of CASA. At the same time, I was working with an organization called El Centro de la Raza. I got really exposed to the Native American sovereignty movement. In that same process, I began to tease out in my own culture, in my own history, I was Native American. Actually, my grandfather and my grandmother are Indian. They're Tiwas. They're part of the 8 tribes, pueblos. I began to building a relationship with them. I began to then identify as indigenous. And that really helped me get rooted in terms of my roots. I began to take classes that would help me work with the farm workers. And so I learned how to do communications, how to put together a newsletter, how to write articles. I started taking classes on radio production, how to communicate effectively with the audience that you're trying to reach. And some of those skills that I learned at that particular time, I've used today in my organizing. That's one of the reasons why Pecun, started off with Radio Movimiento, and then we went to Radio Poder. I came to Oregon to organize the CASA chapter. I was already attending Colegio Cesar Chavez, and I think one of the most important things they had going for them is they had a College Without Walls program, going to college and not actually go to the campus. So like Cipriano Ferrer, one of the founders of Pecun, got his BA from the college. So that's where I went. I went to school there and I met Cipriano. We were actually active with Colegio, but at the same time working at developing the Willamette Valley Immigration Project was the organization that founded Pecun. Willamette Valley Immigration Project did immigration work, did immigration deportation defense work, wrote a manual on how to defend people, and we were, over the years, we helped literally thousands of people. I had a lot of fear in me, so one of the things that I had to do is like deal with my fear. Mainly the fear that I had was the lack of knowledge, the lack of not knowing where we were going. With the help of Cipriano and Larry and others, I was able to challenge myself to deal with those barriers that I had. But what I really need to do is put into practice what my beliefs were, right? And so part of that was understanding that if I was going to change, that I had to be the most honest person that I could be. And then I had to also believe and emulate that every worker, every farm worker has the ability to be an organizer. One of the things that I learned is paying attention to the details, or paying attention to the objective conditions that you are facing, and not to fantasize, really realistically do a plan according to your objective condition. And it took a lot of practice, a lot of organizing, and even challenge ourselves to the isms, right? Like for example, I grew up as a sexist, and it took me a lot of workshops, a lot of education, and a lot of talking to people to get me to a point where I recognize that I will never change. The best I could do is be the best ally for women when challenging my own sexist practices and for gay people. But I live in a society where homophobic is rampant, especially in the Latino community. And it's hard for me sometimes to challenge my own people against those views. And we're challenged every day. And so to me, I got to the point where if I didn't deal with those challenges, then our movement wasn't going to go anywhere. In 1985, after years of being an organizing committee, there was a feeling that people wanted to change. And so we began talking about unionization. On April 28, 1985, we decided to have our founding meeting, and there was about 85 workers. Everybody that attended were farm workers, but the majority of people that attended also were tree planters, because a lot of people work in tree planting, but we're also farm workers.
Yeah, in 1993, Caesar passed away, and it had a profound effect on, I think, on all of us in Pecun, because we had enjoyed a relationship with him. But in particular, I was impacted a lot, and that was because 10 days prior to him passing, I spent about 5 hours with him in La Paz, down in Keene, California, where he lived. And we strategized. We strategized around a bunch of things. And then the next thing I knew was I got a call from a reporter saying if I had a comment about Caesar's death. And I said, wow, did he pass away? And sure enough, I started getting calls from people, and it really had a profound effect because I just spent a lot of time with him. And he doesn't give a lot of time to people. And I think because, we were Pecun, he had a relationship with Cipriano, that he gave us the time. And so we went down and participated in his funeral. We're there at the funeral, and they said, well, what do you think? And they go, well, we're gonna have to double our efforts. And I think that's one of the things that Cipriano and Larry were talking about, is that now, it's now on our shoulders to carry on the bulk of the work that Caesar was doing. Caesar was sort of like the lightning rod for the movement. And so all the attacks were coming down. They were attacking farm workers through Caesar and the UFW. And so now it was our responsibility to carry some of that responsibility. So in September of 1995, Larry had gone to my house and told me that Cipriano had passed, and I couldn't believe it. But I saw the seriousness in Larry's face, and I said, oh, this is happening. It seemed like all the responsibility of the movement fell on my shoulders. And at that time, I think one of the things that happened is I think Cipriano was training me to become a stronger leader, take on more responsibility. And I knew that the work that we were doing with the Farm Worker Network presented us with a lot of challenges. He was guiding me in that process so that I could be a better, a stronger leader, and confront a lot of my own personal contradictions that I had. And so I took it really hard, but I tried not to show it because there was a level of responsibility. I mean, I felt like I had to up the ante here. I had to step up to the plate. I tried not to show my emotions, but deep down inside I was hurting. I felt like up to then I was like the luckiest person in the world because Cipriano was taking on a lot of the work. I mean, a lot of the difficult decisions, a lot of the strategy, implementing the strategy, and dealing with all the controversies that were happening at the time. On the other hand, I wasn't making those decisions, but I knew then and then when Cipriano passed that I was going to have to take on that responsibility.
I've known Ramon for 45 years. I met him when we first started the Willamette Valley Immigration Project, and we worked together in the project, and then we were co-founders along with others of Pecun in 1985. Ramon became an officer of the board not long after that, and I became secretary-treasurer in 1988, and I served until 2013 when I stepped down as part of a generational shift of leadership. So Cipriano died suddenly. I was with him the Sunday before he died. The only time I ever went fishing with him, actually, and I drove the boat, but he loved to fish. Tuesday, didn't show up to work. Monday, he didn't show up. Tuesday, he didn't show up. We sent Leone to go see what was up with him, if something was up. Leone called me and said Cipriano was dead. He had been found in his apartment. and died of a heart attack. And it was my task to go tell Ramon. And I went to his home, and he opened the door. It was early afternoon, I think, at that point. And I just said to him, Cipriano died. And I think he saw in me, and I saw in him, that instant reaction where life had changed in a moment. Our lives had changed. We didn't know how we were going to carry on because Cipriano was our rock, just like Caesar was the rock for so many. The go-to person, the person who will know what to do if things are really hard and we feel lost. And so now, that was going to have to be us. And I think he and I both had the sense instantaneously that we had been preparing for this moment, even though we had no idea it would ever come exactly, but here it was. And we now both had to shoulder. We had to be that rock now for ourselves and for others. Ramon is a generous person. He's a humble person. He's a person of conviction, a believer in making things happen and including other people in the making of things happening. So even in his many roles as a key leader, he is always inclusive of people and acknowledging and respectful of people in their agency in that process. Ramon is a person with incredible heart, with powerful ideas, and sets, I think, an incredible example. Did then and continues to do now.
Ramon to me is a mentor. You know, Ramon to me is the movement of life. He's a brother. I mean, I've been walking with him this path. He's also a great mentor to me. You know, when I started the movement, he shared a lot with me about what we do, who we are, and the purpose of why we do what we do, and the Valley and the movement with the sister organizations. So absolutely, Ramon is someone that I admire and I keep looking up for.
When I think about Ramon, I think of now a movement elder, a leader, a mentor, a comrade, someone who has always been highly, highly centered in community, in building power for farm workers, someone who has given really all of themselves, 110% of themselves, to organizing and community building.
Hey, Ramon Ramirez. ¿Qué tal? Bien, bien. He's my idol. 1986. Sí. Yo era un teenager. Y por todo lo que ha hecho por la comunidad, eso vale mucho porque creo que hay muy poca gente que puede entregar su vida a la comunidad, ¿no? Porque muchos somos, ¿cómo se dice? Selfish, nomás queremos para nosotros, pero no nos importa a los demás. Pero a él le importa primero a los demás, después él al último. Alguna calle tiene que llamarse Ramon Ramirez.
So I think important qualities in Ramon as a leader and as an example of a leader has been his work to deal with his own insecurities. Insecurities of fear, insecurities of inferiority, of incapacity, or lack of confidence. And it's incredibly hard work. It's work that most people avoid for obvious reasons. But what I have seen is leaders that don't do that work, either working on arrogance or working on fear or any number of things, end up being flawed leaders. And so I think Ramon's ability to endure, his resilience, and the power of his example over decades owes a lot to that work that he invested.
I feel a sense of accomplishment. First of all, I think we've been able to do a lot with few resources, but at the same time, I feel like we have a long ways to go. What I'm more proud of is that I left the movement like 2 years ago, stronger than I found it, with a lot of capacity. And you can see now that all the organizations are flourishing. And this comes on the heels of a major pandemic of the century. So I'm really happy about where I'm at right now.